Good morning, everyone. And thank you all for being so patient with the change in the technology issues that we're having. So, freedom to be me. Once upon a time, there was a little girl, and she went to school. And when the little girl had been in school for a while, the teacher said, "Today we are going to make a picture." Good, I like to make pictures, thought the little girl. She could make all kinds, lions and tigers and chickens and cows and smiley faces and boats. And she went to her easel and she began to draw. But the teacher said, "Wait, it's not time to begin. Now we are going to make flowers." Good, I love to make flowers, thought the little girl, and she began to make a beautiful flower with her pink and purple and blue crayons. But the teacher said, "Wait, I'm going to show you how. There, now you may begin." The little girl looked at the teacher's flower. Then she looked at her own flower. She liked her flower better than the teacher's. But she did not say this. She just made the flower like the teacher's. It was red with a green stem. On another day, when the little girl had opened the door from the outside all by herself, the teacher said, "Today we are going to make something with clay." Good. I like clay, thought the little girl. She could make all kinds of things with clay. Snakes and snowmen and elephants and mice and cars and trucks. And she began to pull and pinch her ball of clay, and the teacher said, "Wait, it's not time to begin. Now we are going to make a dish." The little girl liked to make dishes, and she began to make a dish that was most unusual and had an interesting shape. But the teacher said, "Wait, I will show you how." And she showed her how to make a deep dish. There, now you may begin. The little girl looked at the teacher's dish, and then she looked at her own. She liked her dish better than the teacher's, but she did not say this. She just rolled her clay into a big ball again and made a dish like the teacher's. It was a deep dish, and pretty soon the little girl learned to wait and to watch and to make things just like the teacher. And pretty soon she didn't make things of her own anymore. Then it happened that the little girl and her family moved to another house in another city, and the little girl had to go to another school. And the very first day she was there, the new teacher said, "Today we are going to make a picture." Good, thought the little girl. And she waited for the teacher to tell her what to do. But the teacher didn't say anything. She just walked around the room. When she came to the little girl, she said, "Don't you want to make a picture?" "Oh, yes. What are we going to make?" asked the little girl. "I don't know until you make it," responded the teacher. "How shall I make it?" asked the little girl. "Why, any way you like," responded the teacher. "Any color?" "Any color. If everyone made the same picture and used the same colors, how would we know who made what and which was what?" The little girl said, I don't know." And she began to make a red flower with a green stem. Did anybody ever experience something like this growing up? Perhaps it wasn't a teacher. It could have been a parent, right, or a relative, or even a member of the clergy. Were you ever told by a minister, a priest, or a rabbi not to ask so many darn questions? And in those situations, you really weren't free to be you, were you? But remember these words from Dr. Ernest Holmes, which I shared last Sunday. "Freedom is the birthright of every living soul. Our inherent nature is forever seeking to express itself in terms of freedom. We do well to listen to this inner voice, for it tells us of a life wonderful in its scope and of a love beyond our fondest dreams." That's page 25 of the Science of Mind textbook. These words are serving as our foundation this month as we apply the freedom factor each Sunday. Today we will apply them within the context of freedom to be me. Freedom to be who we uniquely came here to be is the birthright of every living soul. Freedom to be who you uniquely came here to be is your birthright. So say that with me. Freedom to be, who I uniquely came here to be, is my divine birthright. So the question this morning is, are you expressing your divine birthright, or are you drawing red flowers with green stems? It's my intention that this morning we look at having the freedom to be who we uniquely are. Today is filled with illustrations. We began with one in which we saw how who we are can be squelched, and we will end with, actually you will end when you go home and watch it on your YouTube. Well, it's an incredibly beautiful and touching one showing what happens when we are really, who we are is really nurtured and supported. And in the middle, now, we have one that will help us think anew about ourselves. So how many of you have been to Italy and seen the great work of David, Michelangelo's David? Okay. Do you remember the story about how David came about? Do you remember that? Okay, well, I'm going to share that this morning. Okay, in the mid-1400s in Italy, sculptors were commissioned to create a series of 12 large Old Testament figures for the cathedral in the Basilica di Santa Maria del Fiore in Florence. 2 of the statues were completed, and in 1464, the artist Agostino di Duccio was commissioned to sculpt David. So they brought a giant block of marble that was mined and brought all the way from a quarry in northern Tuscany for the piece. This took a great amount of effort and expense. Although Di Duccio spent 2 years on the project, he did not get very far. He only had begun shaping the legs and the feet. And his association at this point with the project ceased, according to Wikipedia. And I would say that he was fired. A year later, in 1467, another artist, Antonio Rossellino, was commissioned to take up where Di Duccio had left off. However, Rossellino did not get very far either before he too was fired, and the project was abandoned. It wasn't abandoned for just a few months, but in fact for 25 years. For 25 years, this giant block of marble lay neglected and deteriorating in the yard of the cathedral workshop. Just the legs and the feet in the beginning of the figure. That was all that was done. But in 1501, the authorities were determined to find an artist who could take this large piece of marble, which they called the Giant, and turn it into a finished work of art. They ordered it to be raised on its feet so that the master experienced in this kind of work might examine it and express an opinion. Although Leonardo da Vinci and others were consulted, it was the 26-year-old artist by the name of Michelangelo who convinced the church authorities to give him the commission. So on August 16th, a lot of good things happen on August 16th. 1501, Michelangelo was given the official contract and he began carving the statue 1 month later. He worked on the massive biblical hero for 3 years, completing it in 1504. And although Michelangelo was an artistic genius with many capabilities, he considered sculpting to be the highest form of art because, among other reasons, he felt it mimicked divine creation. Makes you want to go get some marble, right? He worked under the premise that David was already in the block of stone, just waiting to be revealed. His job was to simply chisel away anything that was not David. Wow. Isn't that an amazing spiritual part of that story? Did you hear any others in that story? Because there are several. The first and the most obvious one was David was already in the stone, already in there waiting to be revealed. Michelangelo viewed his job as simply removing that which was not David. As Meister Eckhart, the German mystic in the late 1200s who proclaimed the union of individual soul with God, wisely pointed out, the spiritual life is not a process of addition, but rather of subtraction. The unique, wonderful, glorious, creative, gifted, talented, free you is inside. It's already there. You have always been there. You don't need to find it, get it, or add to it. But you just might have to chip away what it is not in order to reveal it. Holmes, in this thing called you, said, if God created you after his own nature, and there is nothing else that he could have made you out of, because God is all there is, right? Then the thing that you are after is already here within you. The only thing that stands between you and it are the accumulated thoughts, beliefs, and emotions of the ages. But there is nothing there that has not been put there either by yourself or the race consciousness. What has been put there can be removed. And Joy does that on a regular basis. The Spanish cellist Pablo Casals once pointedly inquired how we see ourselves and our children. When will we teach our children what they are? We should say to each of them, "Do you know what you are? You are a marvel. You are unique. In all of the world there is no other child exactly like you. In the millions of years that have passed, there has never been another child like you. And look at your body. What a wonder it is. Your legs and your arms, your cunning fingers, the way that you move. You may become a Shakespeare, a Michelangelo, a Beethoven. You have the capacity for anything. Yes, you are a marvel." Okay, so you may not have heard that as a child, but how about if we hear that now? Let's hear that now. Let me say to you, do you know what you are? You are a marvel. You are unique. In all of the world, there is no one exactly like you. In the millions of years that have passed, there has never been another like you. And look at your body. What a wonder it is. Your legs, your arms, your cunning fingers. The way that you move. You have the capacity for anything. Yes, you are a marvel. We read in Matthew, "You therefore must be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect." Wow. That's a good one to repeat every day. Today it is the time to chip away that which stands in the way of your unique and wonderful and perfect self. So the second spiritual message, it took Michelangelo to see David within the stone. Before Michelangelo, 2 other artists worked on the giant piece of marble, and several others, including Leonardo da Vinci, were asked to consider working on it, but none of them could see David like Michelangelo could. There were many in your past, perhaps, that could not see the unique you. Many who could not see. And we've just realized, just because they couldn't see it, doesn't mean that it wasn't there all along. And it's now time for you to find your own Michelangelos. And of even greater importance, for you to become your own. As I think back on my life, I will be forever grateful for one of my Michelangelos. My second Science of Mind teacher and minister when I was a young mother in my late 20s. She saw the potential in me. I was getting ready to move up north, and I'd already taken the Science of Mind 101, 102, two or three times. And I was asking her, I said, "Oh, who's a minister up there so I can start these classes over again? I can start taking the 100 series and the 200. And she looked at me and she said, "Enough of that already. Move on to practitioner. You're ready." Wow, she saw potential in me. I just wanted to keep doing the same classes over and over again. So she saw it, she encouraged it, and of course I didn't stop there. Once I got going, it was just kept going. Quite amazing. And I'm sure you can look back and see those people who saw that in you and encouraged you to take that next step. One of the things I love to do is I don't know if you're like the Hallmark stores where you go in the card shops and you read the cards, and you can get lost reading these cards, and you may not even have anybody give that card to, but you love it so much you buy it. I have a stack of cards. Someday I'll find somebody to give this to, right? I just love doing that. One of the cards that I found on one of my shopping sprees was a beautiful birthday card with the following message: "Until we see what we are, we cannot take the steps to become what we are meant to be." Very profound. Hallmark can be really, I'm not even sure it was Hallmark, but I love cards. I think that's just beautiful. So maybe you have never had a Michelangelo in your life, although I'm pretty sure you probably have. But perhaps you just didn't recognize him or her. Well, begin to recognize now, and remember that what he or she said to you. Sometimes we just dismiss it. Think back. Remember what they said. And who can be a Michelangelo for you today? How can you begin to be your own? One of the greatest ways to call out your greatness is to help someone else call out their greatness. So how about if you choose this morning to be someone else's Michelangelo? To see someone else's greatness and help them see it as well. It's no greater gift. So on to our third spiritual message. It took time. It took time for David to be revealed. As I sat yesterday with the story of the creation of David, I became curious to figure out how long it took from the beginning to the end, from start to finish. So the original commissioning of the piece was in 1464. Michelangelo completed it in 1504. Anybody figure that out? 40 years. 40 years. It took 40 years for David to be revealed from the block of stone. So who knows the spiritual significance of 40 years, of the number 40? Anybody know
It can
the...
be speeded up if somebody really sees the David. It's like
Well,
it only took
Yeah,
3 years.
yeah, true. But the number 40 is a spiritual number. And 40 symbolizes all the time it takes for the spiritual awakening or transformation. That's what the number 40 symbolizes. So if you think about it, Noah and company spent 40 days on the ark. Buddha spent 40 days under the Bodhi tree. Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness being tempted. Moses and the Israelites spent 40 years in the wilderness. And now we have another to add to the list. It took 40 years for David to be revealed from the block of marble. All the time that it takes for transformation. It's just a number. But that's what it symbolizes, all the time it takes. However long that it takes for transformation. However long it takes for you to be free, to be you, is okay. So there's no time limit. The journey is what's important, right? The discovery, the experience. It is okay, but let's begin today. Why wait? Let's do this. So our goal for today is to let Michelangelo's David teach you these three profound spiritual truths. The glorious you already exists. It's already there. Surround yourself with those who see it, begin to see it for yourself, and help others see it in themselves. Gosh, the energy of that feels really good. Remember, it does take time, and that's okay, but we choose to start today. So, at this point, I wanted to leave you with the final illustration, which shows that you know what can happen when the unique and wonderful qualities that reside within you are called forth. And it does illustrate this video that you will have to watch on your own. It illustrates what happens when one is given the freedom to be themselves. So this is the one, and you may have already seen it. It's the one of they're the surfing dogs. They're called surface dogs.
Service dogs?
I think it's titled Surface Dogs.
Okay.
They were dogs that were trained to be. They were in the program to be assistant dogs, support dogs, and to help disabled and access and functional needs folks. And if they don't have the qualities, they fail and they're kicked out of the program. But this whole video is about this dog that wasn't suitable for doing that, but he could surf and he could help handicapped children surf. And it's a really sweet video, and I'll show it next week when I get my computer working again. But you can go to YouTube and it's surface dog, like a service dog. He's a surface dog. So
SURFACE.
something like, I think that's it, or ICE. Yeah, I think you'll find it. But it's a very touching video. But with that, anyway, that's all that we have today. And I apologize for the technical difficulties. But anyway, let you be free to be you, the glorious you that you are, and so it is.